starting now.
Great.
All right. So here's our agenda. I just covered the introductions. Please rename yourself in your city so that we make sure to put you in the right chat if you can't get there yourselves. So Nikita will do an overview on Vision Zero, then Kevin will talk about it in Daly City, Hans in Fremont, and Jesse in San Jose. And Emma will wrap up with some more about what SVBC has been doing. Then we're going to hopefully have 10 minutes for Q&A before we transition into the regular team meeting part of the agenda. So please, meeting guidelines, take space, make space, try and listen as much as you talk, stay on topic, please don't interrupt, and assume people are here with good intentions because we're all hopefully people that are bike riders.
Hey, John, your slides haven't updated.
They haven't? Okay, which slide are you on?
Oh, we're just on the agenda slide now.
Wow. I'm 2 slides ahead of that. Do you want to take over, Emma, or?
Yeah, I can try.
Okay, I will stop doing a stop share and you will take over.
Okay. Wait 1 second. Why don't you keep talking while I pull that up?
All right. So Zoom basics, please rename yourself to include your city and your preferred pronouns. If you have questions, please write them in the chat. We will have people monitoring the chat. And then stay tuned for the breakout sessions afterwards. And now we're on to our first speaker, Nikita from California Walks, to talk about Vision Zero advocacy.
Thank you, John. Hi, everybody. I'm going to just start without the slides.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Nikita. I work for an organization called California Walks on our Walk San Jose program. We're a statewide organization working to create healthy walkable communities for people of all ages and abilities. And our Walk San Jose program upholds that mission locally. So I work with partners like the Bike Coalition and the city to help build pedestrian safety and walkability efforts here in San Jose. Our vision is for San Jose as a city where all residents can move in public spaces under their own power with confidence, dignity, and security. And so to carry out that vision, we work a lot on an initiative called Vision Zero. So I'm doing a little intro today to talk about what Vision Zero is, and then do a kind of an overview of some of the advocacy work that's gone on in San Jose. What is Vision Zero? So Vision Zero is an initiative to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries. The goal of Vision Zero is to create safe streets where people can travel by any mode, walking, driving, or biking, without being injured or killed. I'm going to wait for Emma to get to my slides. Okay, here it is. Thank you, Emma. So this initiative started in Sweden in the 1990s before moving over to the US, I think in the early 2000s and late 1990s. And San Jose was actually one of the earlier American cities to adopt it back in 2015. So Vision Zero states that traffic deaths are preventable. If we use a systems approach to our streets, we can design streets that prevent all fatal and severe injury crashes. This model acknowledges that humans make mistakes, and if we plan and design for errors, they won't result in death or severe injury. Next slide. So Vision Zero programs require a lot of different elements in order to be successful. Each of the next speakers is going to do a deeper dive into these elements as they talk about their own cities, but I'll just introduce some of them. Collaboration between city departments, decision makers, residents, and advocates is key for any Vision Zero program. These programs collect data and analyze data to understand the causes of crashes so that we can strategically make decisions on how to use resources to reduce crashes that lead to death or severe injury. Racial equity ensures that the appropriate resources are going back to neighborhoods that face this issue disproportionately. Often the neighborhoods that have the most amount of fatal or severe injury crashes are neighborhoods that have faced redlining and historic disinvestment. And then leadership allows Vision Zero programs to get the resources and urgency that these issues demand. There's 6 different Vision Zero strategies that you can see on the slide. These are commonly referred to as 6 E's, different approaches to Vision Zero: evaluation, engineering or infrastructure, educational programs, encouragement work like Bike to Wherever Day, enforcement, and equity, as mentioned. Next slide. So before talking a little bit about our advocacy work, I'll give you some more context into traffic safety in San Jose, but not too much because I know Jesse's gonna give a really awesome overview of some more up-to-date data and some more in-depth data as well. So this graph shows a snapshot of 5 years of traffic deaths in San Jose. Both 2015 and 2019 had a record-breaking year of 60 deaths, but pedestrian fatalities in particular are increasing, which reflects a nationwide trend over the past decade, which some people think could be related to distracted driving from smartphones or drivers driving in larger cars like SUVs, which are more dangerous in a crash. Next slide. Our advocacy work is focused on this trend of increasing pedestrian deaths. So I'll share a couple ways that we engage with decision makers on this issue. One of our key goals is to highlight the real life human impact of traffic safety. Each data point that we consider through Vision Zero represents a person, their family, and their community. Data showing one neighborhood with many traffic fatalities isn't showing us isolated incidents, it's showing us a traumatized community. So we work with our coalition, including affected families, resident advocates, the Bike Coalition, AARP, and so many others, to bring the real life stories and urgencies to Vision Zero. So the photo on the left shows a Transportation and Environment Committee from last January, back in person, where we filled the room with posters for each person who was killed while walking and biking in 2019 to show decision makers, as they talked about Vision Zero, what the real life human impact was. Another one of our goals is to make sure that information on Vision Zero is transparent and publicly accessible in order to get regular input from the community on these programs. So the Vision Zero Task Force in San Jose is a group that was started last year and meets quarterly and is open to the public. Next slide. So every November, we work with local affected families to hold a memorial event called World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims. So this event serves as a way to remember our friends, family, and neighbors who were killed on our streets and to call our leaders to action. So these are a couple images from the event that we held this past November, which, although we had limited attendance in person, was streamed out through Facebook and a local channel as well. At the event this past year, we created a display which had a pair of shoes for each person killed over the past 5 years. So what you're seeing is 250 pairs of shoes, one to represent each person killed between January 2016 and November 2020. So 250 people over a little less than 5 years. And at this event, we were so grateful to be joined by Council Members Perales and Foley, who chair the Vision Zero Task Force, and John Risto, the Director of the Department of Transportation, who all spoke about their commitment to traffic safety. Next slide. As an advocacy organization, we also do a lot of education and community engagement work to bring the community voice into this space. So I'll go through a couple examples of recent programs that we've worked on. The first, and what you're seeing is some materials from our senior safety series that we did last summer in partnership with the Department of Transportation. So we presented information virtually and led virtual walk assessments as well to talk with older adults about issues that they're commonly facing. The feedback that we heard through this program now helps inform the city's decisions on future safety improvement projects. And then next slide. And then right now, one program we're working on, which I'm really excited about, is working with youth to empower youth participants to lead the conversation on reducing transportation-related greenhouse gas emissions in San Jose. So we're leading a series of workshops where we cover topics related to sustainable transportation and advocacy, and encourage youth participants to engage in promoting change with local decision makers. And next slide. So to wrap up my section, how you can get involved, the good news is that you're in the right place. The Bike Coalition does work not just in San Jose, but across Santa Clara and San Mateo counties, and it's really exciting to see all of you here today. But I included a couple of upcoming meetings in San Jose if you're in San Jose and interested. There is a Transportation Environment Committee meeting on May 3rd, where they will be discussing Vision Zero, and there are quarterly Vision Zero Task Force meetings, as I mentioned. The next one is on June 4th. So thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. And If you're interested in talking more about advocacy work and starting up some advocacy work in other cities, or just want to talk more about some of what I covered, please feel free to reach out. But I'll pass it over to our other speakers.
Thanks, Nikita. And we have Kevin from Daly City now.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It's a really pleasure to be here, and thanks for the invitation. It's a bit laggy here. Sorry. I'm going to turn off my video to see if I can fix my streaming. Is my slide up yet?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm gonna try this to, okay, I see it. Yeah, sorry everybody. I have some new Wi-Fi I'm trying out, it seems like. So let me go ahead and get started here. On to the next slide. Daly City is a larger city up in the north of the county. So we have about 40 traffic signals. We have a couple BART stations, and we have pretty large commercial centers, but a lot of our city is suburban. But that said, we're pretty dense. So we have a population over 100,000, one of the densest in the county, right tucked up under San Francisco. Next slide, please. And so in 2016, in large part thanks to the advocacy of this group, actually, our city council adopted a resolution, Vision Zero. And it was just over 5 years today when they did that. And this was the initial action that they took, which said Vision Zero is a goal for Daly City. Next slide.
Oops, hold on.
All right, so what do you do with that though? So the resolution is one thing, but it doesn't tell you exactly how you're going to get to zero. So it really takes some champions. Every city is going to be different, but you need some champions in your city in order to move this along from the initial resolution into action. And so what Daly City did is we designated a council subcommittee. We had their support from day one. And then the council subcommittee of 2 individuals, they stayed as a part of this along the way as we developed our action plan. And that action plan was developed with large thanks to a grant from FHWA. We were one of 3 cities selected by them to receive free consultant help in order to develop the action plan. And so that consultant, Fair and Peers, they did a ton of data analysis, stakeholder engagement, and much more in order to develop our action plan itself. So next slide here. So the action plan, it's different than the initial resolution because this is actually where you set your goal. So in our case, we decided that Daly City, we were going to commit to getting to zero by 2035. So that's now 14 years away. It was 15 years away last year when the action plan was actually adopted, but that's what our action plan says. So let's move on to the next slide. So while developing this action plan, you do some crash analysis. So our consultant looked at all the crashes recorded in about a 5-year period, and here's a couple examples of it. There's more information in our actual action plan. Things like time of day analysis, modal analysis, where we found that about half of our crashes that were resulting in serious injuries or fatalities were of bicyclists and pedestrians, and the other half in auto, passengers, or drivers. But there's a lot more analysis that usually takes place as you develop the action plan. Go on to the next slide, please. So what you do with this data is one of the common things you'll see is each action plan will have a high injury network established. This is where your crashes that cause or involve serious injuries and fatalities are taking place. So that analysis ends up coming up with this map. And in Daly City's case, about 2/3 of our crashes overall, and even more than that, 83% of our serious injuries and fatalities occurred on just 17% of the roadway. These roadways in the city tend to be higher speed roadways, denser populated roadways, they're near commercial areas. But in our case, we're so suburban, some of these are actually in residential neighborhoods that typically should be quiet. Next slide, please. And so now you have the visual, you know where, and these 5 emphasis areas tell you what? They tell you why serious injuries and fatalities are occurring. In our case, the number 1, and you see at the right, the reason this is number 1 is because it says % of all KSI being killed or seriously injured. 58% involved crashes on arterials. Just below that, 44% of our KSIs involve pedestrians. Nighttime crashes are right behind that, 42% of which occurred at night. And so this tells you these are our top 3 of the 5, where almost half of our crashes had one or more of these factors involved in them. And so kind of like with the high injury network, it tells you where. Well, this tells you what's going on. Things are happening at night with pedestrians on major roadways. People may be impaired, and they're happening in a broadside manner, which is the 5th one on the list here. Next slide, please. And so the action plan itself lays out what to do. So you have the where, you have the why, and it's what are we going to do next? And part of this is institutionalization and education. And in our case, there's an example of just a few of those. You have a few dozen actually in the action plan. And this is to do things like getting a city council pledge. It's to do succession planning, to designate Vision Zero coordinators, and make sure that all of our policies are in line with Vision Zero. Next slide. Here's one early example of something we did from right off the bat is we decided to narrow our lanes on a major roadway. It's Guadalupe Canyon, comes down from San Bruno Mountain. And what you see here is a Vision Zero style improvement where we recognize on the right side of the screen, we have a school pickup and drop off adjacent to an elementary school that actually takes place on this major roadway where we have high speeds of cars going in both directions. So Vision Zero says, hey, you know you have potential for injury here because it's on your high injury network, and you know you have school kids running around, so you should do something statistically proven to make it more safe, which would be to narrow lanes, slow down traffic by doing so, and to create more distance between the 2 parties that might conflict. Next slide. And so some additional action plan examples, I know later on today you'll hear some more implementation examples, which will really help you visualize how this looks like, would be to incorporate into your capital improvement program, use technology, data collection to further your Vision Zero action plan goals and the actions you take under it. It's to do outreach. It's to maintain partnerships. That was mentioned by Nikita. It's absolutely vital to have partnerships developing the action plan, and then you look for partners who will stand by you afterwards as well. And then you talk about resources. You talk about when you're going to do it and how you're going to do it. So next slide, please. A couple of adoption and implementation challenges that I want to cover. In Daly City's case, we are a small, big city. So we don't have the kind of funding that some other peninsula cities may have. And for us, the grant was really key. I don't believe we would have been able to develop the action plan without it. I say this because you kind of need to know the power of a champion. Number 2, we got this through the partnerships and through a lot of the advocacy, again, from Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition and others who helped us get that grant. We worked with partners at the county as well, and we were able to move forward with our action plan development. Third, education was a big thing. Vision Zero is brand new to a lot of people. We taught people taught us. That was really a theme throughout the development of it that I think is important to focus on. The last 2 bullets here I put in because these are questions that we heard. They're concerns that as staff and with our partners, we commonly thought about. Where do I start? How do I keep my momentum? And what happens if we fail? These are tough questions that everyone who goes through an action plan development is going to face. And with the support of partnerships and with others who are experienced in doing it, they can start to answer some of those questions and overcome their concerns. Next slide. So closing out here, what are our next steps to zero? We already adopted our action plan a year ago in a couple days in April 2020. Right after the pandemic started, we went forward and still adopted it as soon as we could. And now we're still shifting our mindset. We're understanding Vision Zero. We're implementing its policies in our projects. We're looking at our resurfacing projects we already do, and we're creating new projects that apply Vision Zero principles to improve safety and reduce injuries and fatalities. We do this also being a small city with limited funding. We're seeking out grants. I'm super happy to say we've gotten between $1 and $2 million in grants awarded over the last year since we adopted our action plan. In addition to being named Project of the Year by this group, really appreciate it. And that's going to help us move forward with some outreach, some more projects, and then down the road, as we get closer and closer to zero, you actually do more data collection and prioritization. Next slide. And for when this is distributed, here's some links. Feel free to reach out to me if anyone needs these links as well, but I wanted to include them because our action plan is up on our website and there's more info from the FHWA who gave us the grant on their website as well. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That was awesome. Next, we have Hans Larson from City of Fremont.
Unmute myself here, so hopefully you can hear. Hey, so I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share with you Fremont's Vision Zero experience. We have been doing this for 5 years, and a week ago from Tuesday, our city council adopted a renewed Vision Zero action plan. This plan covers what we've done in the first 5 years, and then sets a vision for the next 5 years of our Vision Zero program. Next slide. All right, so I think the kind of the notable thing about Fremont's program is acting boldly with urgency and passion. And we're really proud of the fact that in the 5 years since we started, we've achieved a 45% reduction in severe injury and fatality crashes. And we've done that by working fast and working boldly. Our plan was initiated by the City Council. 2 months later, we adopted a Vision Zero policy. 6 months later, we adopted an action plan. And we did all this at no added cost, no consultants. We actually didn't even form a task force. This was done entirely kind of internally, looking at best practices on what was going to be able to improve traffic safety in the quickest possible way. Another kind of sign of the urgency that we took is that when the City Council adopted the plan, $2.5 million was rebudgeted out of the capital program so that we had resources immediately available to begin implementing the plan. So we didn't wait for a normal budget cycle. We kind of put our money's where our mouth was. And if safety is the top priority, we moved ahead right away. So taking off of the kind of Vision Zero 2020 program, we launched a 20 projects in 20 months plan. And then one of the unique things is we've had this incredible partnership with our local school district. Notably, Fremont was one of the early adopters of Vision Zero. There's over 50 or approximately 50 cities now that are doing this. We were the 8th city sort of following the lead of San Francisco and San Jose within the Bay Area. Next slide. So I think really the hallmark of our program is having really passionate people internally that drive this. Our program is led by a senior transportation engineer, and I think that having the engineering organization, whether it's in Public Works or Department of Transportation, is really kind of where the program is best driven. You need a good partnership with your police department, as well as other resources in the organization for communications. So these are the kind of the key supporting roles that have worked well here for Fremont. And having folks, engineers that are willing to be out there as YouTube stars and take on the names like Safety Sheila and Mobility Matt, have been part of sort of the passion that's driven, our progress. Next slide. So as Kevin mentioned, part of the data analysis is looking at where you have the biggest problems. And it's, not surprisingly that speed and street design are the main factors that are associated with major crashes. And so, we found that 10% of our streets had 90% of our fatalities and 2/3 of our severe injuries. And that's where we focused further analysis and project improvements. Next slide. So here's kind of the results that we got. We measured sort of the 45% improvement by taking a 3-year rolling average, the 3 years before we adopted Vision Zero with the latest 3 years. It's recognized, that the numbers, particularly for small cities, can vary up and down. So you don't want to get too hung up on, what happens on an individual year, but you want to look at, are you moving things, in a positive direction on an average basis. Next slide. So street design, I think, has really been the key thing that we focused on. And a key question to ask is, is your city, using Caltrans design standards or a more progressive NACTO-based urban design guidelines? And so we've adopted NACTO as our design guidance, narrowed lanes, and then we implement this in a systematic way through our pavement maintenance programs. And so one of the key things for fast implementation is to find out who the pavement maintenance manager is and make sure that when you have an opportunity to seal a street, resurface it, that you're putting back new striping that is that is progressive street design. So narrow lanes, spaces for bikes, more high visibility locations for pedestrians. Next slide. Lighting for Fremont was a big issue. And so we initiated in our first year a complete relamping of all of our city streets to brighter white LED street lights. Basically, you can pay for that based on the energy savings in the future. We completely retrofitted all of our traffic signals with countdown timers, and then we implemented a lot more pedestrian beacons to give pedestrians more of a chance to cross the street safely. Next slide. The next slide, hopefully that catches up here, is the use of quick build construction techniques. So basically you can do a lot quickly and inexpensively by using paint and plastic. And we had a major program within our neighborhoods and around our schools. And seeing the slides advance there. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to turn off my video to see if maybe that helps the slides. So the next slide I have is really highlighting, good quality bikeway design. So we've really embraced protected bike lanes and protected intersections. And by narrowing the space for cars, you free up more room for bicyclists. And but these street designs are also safer for pedestrians as well as cars because it forces them to travel more slowly through the intersections. And the next slide I had is a project we're proud of that basically won a national award for one of the best new bikeways in the country. We also had a wonderful partnership with local public health, Kaiser Permanente. They gave us a grant to place slides, place banners on our streets that were among our high injury network with traffic safety messages. We've also had a major speed management program by installing speed feedback signs. And then through the redesign of streets with narrower lanes, we found that the actual operating speed on the streets is lower and that you can actually lower the speed limits due to the changed operations. Let's see, hopefully folks can hear me. It looks like we're having all kinds of interesting meeting items on the screen here. I was asked to kind of speak to one of the biggest challenges that are out there. And the biggest challenge we face is really the resistance from the community about changes in street design, narrower lanes, tighter intersections. We have folks, that don't like the changes. And kind of one of my favorite quotes is that our streets feel more dangerous because they're tighter and people have to slow down when they're driving. And that is kind of the exact result that we want through a tighter street design, is that drivers are much more cautious in their driving habits. Let's see, I don't know if there's any feedback on how to get some of the slides here. It's kind of hard to explain these without the visuals. John, is there
John, did you see that Emma lost her ability to share screen? Can you go ahead and share your screen? Oh, John looks frozen too. Sorry about that, Hans.
Yeah, that's okay.
We're working behind the scenes to fix it.
Yeah, we have the slides, that are available for people to see afterwards. So let me just kind of keep going in the interest of time. So we have done an updated assessment of, where we have the most severe crashes, and what our findings are is that we continue to have an issue with, seniors being our most vulnerable users, more crashes occurring in the dark. Pedestrians are clearly the mode that has the most issues. So out of the last 3 years, we've had 15 fatalities, 9 have been pedestrians. The vast majority of fatalities occur with higher speed limits. So particularly over 40, 45 miles an hour, and then on multi-lane highways. And so we recently adopted a renewed action plan. And this is my last slide here. I don't know if you can catch up with that. But basically our top priorities are along the lines of speed management. And we can't do all of this ourselves. We need help from the state legislature to allow us to use tools like automated speed enforcement and go back one, and then flexibility and lowering speed limits. The second category of things are really continuing the work that we're already doing. And then the third grouping is also related to partnerships. We have a higher number of problems concerning on local state highways that are happening through Fremont. And we're very eager to have MTC as a partner to support the entire Bay Area. So working with a larger Bay Area community can help us achieve our Vision Zero goals faster. And so I think I'm out of time, but happy to participate in any questions. I encourage you to take a look at our updated Vision Zero plan. About 2/3 of it is the work that we've done in the last 5 years. So it's intended to be a useful guide to help others. And then it closes with the things that we're going to be focusing on for the next 5 years. So again, thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Thank you so much, and sorry about that. My internet crashed, of course, right in the middle of the presentation. But now we are on to Jesse Mensroth with City of San Jose. Thank you, Hans.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. And I'm going to talk about some similar points that have been made in a lot of the great presentations that came before. Next slide. So I made a few slides here at the beginning to sort of discuss how to adopt a Vision Zero action plan. As Hans mentioned, we adopted the Vision Zero here in 2015. There have been 3 action plans, 2015, 2017, and the most current is 2020. I'm going to spend most of the time talking about the 2021 since it's the one we're currently working on. It was adopted on February 11th, 2020, right before the pandemic. It has 6 priority action areas. The city passed it with an initial $6.8 million investment in a probably 5-year, $18 million plan. It complements other city goals and policies, improving safety, focusing on vulnerable modes and road users, and also talking about mode shift towards active transportation and away from single occupancy vehicle. It also uses a key strategy, and I think you've gotten this from the other presentations too, that data analysis informs city investment. Next slide, please. So these are the 6 priority action areas of the 2020 Vision Zero action plan for the city of San Jose. 1 is build robust data analytics tools. 2, form a Vision Zero task force. 3, strategize traffic enforcement. 4, increase community outreach and engagement. 5, implement quick build data-driven safety improvements. And 6, prioritize our resources on high fatal and severe injury corridors and districts. Next slide. So just talking about that, there are a manageable number of deliverables. Those 6 areas structure all of our presentations and reports since it, so it makes it easy to follow up on. It creates accountability goals and places to talk about them. So we speak twice a year at City Council. The one that's coming up soon that Nikita mentioned is May 3rd. And then we also created a Vision Zero task force, which is a best practice that's particularly pushed by the Vision Zero network, which is actually based here in the Bay Area, but it's a national organization. So we now have quarterly public meetings. The next one in that series is June 4th, where we invite, well, we basically have, the task force is made up of 20 members, 2 council members, 9 city department decision makers, 6 county department decision makers, and then 3 advocacy groups, including Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, California Walks, and our local AARP chapter. So we also increase local awareness of Vision Zero, because I think most of you will know that it's not a very well-known brand, but perhaps what you're learning from being at this session is that, you know, it's a little bit more maybe strategic in some ways than safety work has been in the past in road redesign. So we use these opportunities to speak at things like this, as well as outreach and news stories to increase literacy about what Vision Zero is. One of the things that a lot of cities do, San Jose included, is to make crash and injury data publicly available. And so if you're interested to see San Jose's data and within a data map, that we have a Power BI map available on our website, which is visionzerosj.org. And we discuss the project types that we do and how, you know, we choose to pursue them because of the result of analyzing the data. And we explain how the proposed solutions respond to that data. And then we also do before and after analyses of projects to see how they perform. So next slide, please. So in the next few slides, I'm basically going to walk you through the way a lot of our presentations go. This is the Vision Zero network map of Vision Zero cities in the US. There are definitely more than 40, almost 50. A lot of them are in California. You can see us there on the map. Next slide. This is something that Nikita mentioned, but this is from a map that's put out every year, rather a presentation put out every year from the Governor's Highway Safety Association. And it shows the trend in US pedestrian fatalities that basically it hit a low in 2009. And then from 2009, it sparked way up. And that uptrend, I think, has been confounding to a lot of people. I don't think most people know that pedestrian fatalities have been on the rise in recent years. And as Nikita mentioned, smartphones, or rather the integration of that type of technology into a lot of people use them on the road these days. I mean, a Tesla basically is a tablet interface. So if you think about the way to which things like that are part of the driving interface, or to that extent, you know, the way that people use them on any other mode too, it's a lot more distracting to, you know, be using it as a road user. So that I personally do buy that argument. SUVs being heavier vehicles and being a higher share of car sales is another definitely likely possibility. So I think that this is one of the big factors underlying the growth and adoption of Vision Zero programs in the US. Next slide. So looking into San Jose's data, this is San Jose's traffic fatality trend in the last 10 years. Between 2012 and 2015, it doubled. And that was the period in which Vision Zero was adopted in San Jose. In 2019, it hit the peak again. And in 2020, it actually dropped a lot. Although I think a lot of us who look at these data points, think 2020 is a pretty unusual year. And so, is 2020 a realistic data point? Are we, or is it the beginning of a new trend? So San Jose its fatalities did drop quite a lot compared to other cities around here. And we were looking at that, sort of trying to wonder if this new down point was, something that other cities were seeing too. Next slide. So looking at that trend, we like to break it down by road user type. So you can see here that particularly people hit while walking grew since 2017 and hit a high point last year in 2019, but then this year went down. And so nonetheless, people hit while walking are the biggest group. There are 110 out of the 257 people killed in traffic in San Jose in the last 5 years. And you can see, I think I should mention cyclists, since there's a cyclist forum, that it's a much smaller number, but nonetheless, we have had a high number of 7 in the last 2 years. And yeah, so let's go to the next slide. If you look at those same numbers and you look at them by median age, you can see also something that Hans mentioned, which is that older adults are one of the bigger groups here. So for example, if you look at the median age of people hit while walking, that 110 people, their median age is 56 in San Jose. If you look at the median ages of the cyclists who are killed in San Jose, their median age is 51, but you can see there's also a really big uptrend in their median ages in recent years, up to 69 years old in 2019. Next slide. I also wanted to talk about some of our our sort of newest data topic in looking into the data is the growth in fatalities due to speeding. In 2020, our speeding fatalities were twice what they were in 2019. And if you look at our top factors leading to fatal and severe injuries, speeding was already the biggest group. So this is something that we're going to work on messaging more. Next slide. So I'm running out of time, so I think I might just end on this slide. But the sort of next several slides are basically how we talk about all of the initiatives that we're doing under each of these 6 areas. And if you're interested to see me do that part of the presentation, definitely come join the San Jose City Council meeting on May 3rd or the Vision Zero Task Force meeting on June 4th. Okay, so back to the hosts.
Thanks, I couldn't find my unmute button. Thank you so much, Jesse. And we'll share these slides as well so people can also peruse those next few slides that Jesse has in here. And I'm just going to go on to a couple of slides that SVBC put together just to set the stage for your group conversations in the second hour. Let me get through to those. And please feel free to start writing questions in the chat, which I see is already happening. And John, maybe you can help facilitate that. But just first of all, these are kind of the first couple steps that we recommend for cities if you don't already have a Vision Zero policy or a plan. So the first step is the policy, and the mayor and the city council have to, set that goal and officially publicly commit to that. And then the Vision Zero plan, which you heard from several of the cities that have already developed their plan. And that sets out what are the strategies, and key departments are also involved. So I made a little map of cities that have a policy or plan locally, but in more detail. This is also on our website. And you can see which cities have a policy. Many more have policies, and often it's in a general plan, a transportation plan, or the bike ped plan. It's a policy statement acknowledging that the intent to reduce fatalities and major injuries to zero by a certain date. Many fewer cities have actual plans. And so that's definitely a next step we would want to see from many cities. And just an overview, this data is a little older, but this is from San Mateo County Health System put this together. So you can see the concentration of bike and pedestrian collisions are in Daly City. This is like North San Mateo and Redwood City, Menlo Park area. And this is specifically around schools. And then again, a few years old of the data, but from, I believe, this actually might have been the countywide bike plan. You can see kind of where collisions are concentrated more around downtown San Jose, but also around the El Camino corridor and the downtown areas as well. So John, do you want to help facilitate the questions coming in through the chat? John Cordes, are you there? You may be
Thank
muted.
you. Yeah. So the first question that came in that I'm hoping Hans will want to address is they wanted to hear more about how the city of Fremont partnered with the school district on Vision Zero.
Yeah, well, I think it started. I mean, it started because there's a long-standing kind of coordination between our city council and school board. So they meet quarterly just to sort of talk and coordinate on items of kind of shared interest. And when the city of Fremont adopted its Vision Zero plan, there was an immediate interest from the school district to hear about it and participate in it. And it was quite magical to see what happened in presenting it, the plan to the school board. We had worked with the staff, and there was an element to enhance our Safe Routes to School program as part of our initial Vision Zero plan. And we had proposed to focus our efforts on 20 schools that were considered to be the highest priorities. Well, the school board felt that they wanted to roll out Vision Zero and Safe Routes to School to every school, and they actually committed the additional money to do school safety audits for all of the schools. And then that led to an amazing amount of work with over 400 projects that were delivered over the past 4 years. And I think the school board and what was really a great resource to really help support and keep the council engaged in safety and deal with what sort of naturally some level of pushback from the community about change in street design. When you had such strong support from the schools, that helped support and allowed us to continue to move forward on an aggressive pace.
The next question I think that's most applicable that kind of all the people could comment on is, what are you doing about messaging to try and change the conversation in your city so it's not so much of a cars rule mentality? Why don't we let Kevin try that one first?
Yeah, to me, what we're trying to do is mention what we're doing and explain why we're doing it a lot. It really takes council support, though, in my opinion, and also institution support. So once you start saying, we're doing a project, it's going to slow speeds down, but it's for safety, and we know statistically that this corridor has a problem with safety, and you're comfortable saying that, then it kind of squashes the conversation a little bit. So you're able to say, we have data to back it up. Here's what it says. It says people are being injured on this corridor, and we want to do something about it.
Thank you. And Jesse, do you want to talk about, I know that we've got a very big outreach plan in San Jose. You could kind of comment on what you're trying to do about changing the conversation.
Yeah, here in San Jose, as part of our action plan, one of the items is to increase outreach and engagement. And the way in which we're doing that is hiring a strategic communications consultant to do basically marketing around Vision Zero. I think if some of you may be aware that San Francisco does that. They have quite a lot of outreach around Vision Zero, including ads that you could see on a billboard or ads that you might get targeted in social media. It's basically that type of project, and we will probably be working with that consultant for a long time. We, at this point, we're not at the point where they're really on board yet, so we don't exactly know what the timeline is or how quickly you'll be able to see things generated through that. But as a little bit of a sort of conceptual idea, you can see some images behind my head, which are some of the things that we've made in-house recently. One of them is a 20 is plenty yard sign, which is available in 3 languages. And the other one is look out when it's dark out. And that one we did for a campaign that we do during the darkest time of the year, when we find in our data that more people are hit during, darker commute times. So those are just, some of our safety messaging campaigns of recent. We also did one before that called Give Seniors a Break, which was actually taken, we worked with the designer that worked for San Francisco on that one, and we brought it here to the South Bay.
John, any other questions? I saw one earlier from, let me go back up, Robert.
I wanted to highlight that, yeah, the Vision Zero Network, which you put in the chat or somebody put in the chat, is a great resource. It's kind of like a lot of advocacy campaigns. I mean, Jesse's right. If we start seeing a lot of lawn signs setting up saying 20 is plenty, and local teams want to organize around trying to lower speeds, depending on how their city does speeds. Every city kind of has different rules about how they define what is the normal speed in different areas. We have a little bit of a challenge with state laws in California, but so different cities are working at it different ways of trying to figure out where they're allowed to lower speeds. And unfortunately, if you lower speeds without changing the infrastructure, now you've got an enforcement problem. So lowering speeds is nice, but unless you can enforce it, it doesn't really help very much, unfortunately.
One thing that might be worth saying is that, well, there is a lot of state rules about how you set speeds. You have to do a survey, and then it comes back with a number, and then you're supposed to basically change. For faster roads, that's the basis of the 85th percentile speed of the survey that you get back from your consultant, basically, is how you pick the posted speed. But it doesn't give cities much flexibility. And so one of the legislation items that we're co-sponsoring this year is a state bill called AB 43, which would give cities more flexibility on how they set the speed limits on wider roads. So I think that's a useful thing to know.
Well, we're almost to the end of time here. John, is there anything else you want to highlight from the Q&A?
No, I think we should just go on to what we've got with the calendar here, what's coming up, and rules for the breakout sessions, which will be starting in about a minute. So right now, we're going to not have a speaker topic per se at the May Biketivist Forum. We're just going to let teams work on their team goals, have a little more time on that, and hopefully do a quick 15-minute rapid fire kind of an update on what teams are working on to try and inspire and encourage each other to share what they're up to. So again, if everybody sends out kind of a status report, one slide early, we can hopefully blast through that in 15 minutes, and then all the teams will have a lot more time to work on in that. One thing I want to remind every team is that sometime in May, it's up to your city, your draft budget for the next fiscal year will be coming out. And definitely in June, your city council will be approving it. So please have somebody trying to pay attention to when the draft budget comes out, and then get a hold of it and look at it and see what they're spending on implementing bike and ped projects. And then hopefully if there's something in there that you want that isn't funded, start a rally campaign, start a campaign to try and get more funding for that particular project, or just for the implementing the bike plan in general, or implementing Vision Zero in general. But definitely focus, try and be on alert in the next month for when your city's draft budget comes out for the next fiscal year. Next slide. These are upcoming events we wanted to highlight. Next week, we've got a family biking workshop. I sent in a message to all the team lists, so please look for that if you want to encourage people to come. May is Bike to Work month, and we have lots and lots of actions going on our website, so look there, including a free film festival for the first time. So May 7th to the 16th, 9 days of film festival. And
correction, John. It's not free. You have to pay for the film festival.
Okay, sorry. Darn. And Tim is in charge of our Bike to Wherever Day activities. So we've been sending out lots of messaging. We're hoping every city is going to have at least one team hosting an Energizer workstation in their city, and contact Tim. And there's been a lot of messaging going out about that. So Tim's made arrangements, instead of businesses sponsoring the Energizer stations this year, we're going to have them at libraries mostly. So we're going to need a lot of volunteers willing to staff a Energizer station in your town at your library, so people can swing by and pick up their Energizer goodie bag. Tim, do you have anything else you want to say about that before we move on?
Just looking forward to a lot of volunteers helping out, being flexible because it's different, and also being flexible about possibly staffing a station in another city next to you, because some areas we have deserts we need to fill in. So hopefully looking for people who can be flexible. Thanks.
All right, before we go to breakout rooms, I just want to say thank you so much to all of our speakers. It was really, really informative, and I know we all got a lot out of it, and we'll be sharing your slides with the attendees here. So we'll let you know if there's other follow-up questions that you guys can help us with, but thanks so much for spending your time with us tonight.
Okay, and I'm going to stop recording now, and we will move on to the breakout sessions.
Okay, I'm opening the rooms, and as usual, let us know if you